Federal agents nabbed a migrant Tren de Aragua gang crew holed up in a Bronx apartment after tracking one of their ankle monitors to the hideout, sources told the Post. The December 5 raid at an apartment building on the edge of Crotona Park, conducted by a federal task force made up of Homeland Security Investigations and the NYPD, landed 7 alleged gangbangers in handcuffs, including a troublesome 28-year-old Venezuelan national who was wearing a court-ordered monitoring device that led the feds to the crew. Better late than never, quipped a law enforcement source who wondered why Jarwin Valero-Calderon was free despite at least 3 busts, a Nassau County conviction and a federal deportation order. "This is what actual supervised release looks like," the source asked. "The thing about ankle monitors is you have to actually monitor them to be effective." The raid was nonetheless a significant blow against TDA, the violent gang that snuck into the U.S. with a wave of migrants seeking asylum since 2022 and gained a foothold in New York. Law enforcement officials said the gang has recruited inside tax-funded migrant shelters and runs violent theft and robbery crews while peddling drugs, guns, and women in the 5 boroughs. "What we're seeing is this evolution of Tren de Aragua, where they've gone into these sanctuary cities," said former Denver IC Chief John Fabricator. "They've started to solidify themselves and then they throw tentacles out to multiple other locations where they think that they can continue to make money. I think people are finally starting to realize how bad the situation has gotten." According to law enforcement sources, most of the gang members busted inside the Bronx apartment were sought on multiple warrants after crossing the U.S. border with Mexico, then disappearing. Among them was Joniker Alexander Gil Cardozo, 24, who had amassed at least 4 busts in 2 states after crossing the border in El Paso in September 2022. Cardozo was previously arrested by the NYPD on grand larceny and stolen property charges in July, and had 2 other Big Apple busts in June for reckless endangerment and robbery, sources said. On June 28, he was also arrested for shoplifting in Greenville, South Carolina, according to the sources. Another notorious TDA member, 30-year-old Jesus Manuel Quintero Granado, crossed the border in El Paso in September 2022 with his Peruvian wife and child, then headed into Canada, the sources said. But Canadian authorities denied the family's asylum request in September 2023 and shipped them back to the U.S., where northern border agents released them pending an immigration hearing, the sources added. Quintero Granado quickly proved himself an undesirable with 4 arrests in New York and New Jersey. The sources said he was first arrested for shoplifting in Paramus on August 18, 2023, followed by an NYPD bust for grand larceny and possession of stolen property in July. On October 1, he was nabbed on a new shoplifting charge in Paramus, followed 3 days later by another grand larceny and stolen property arrest, this time in Wallkill in upstate New York, sources said. Also taken into custody after the December 5 Bronx raid was Angel Gabriel Marquez Rodriguez, 19, who was released with a pending court date after crossing the border in September 2023 only to run afoul of the law just 2 months later in Chicago, the sources said. Rodriguez was arrested in Chicago on November 3, 2023, on a shoplifting charge. Still free, he returned to New York City, where he was busted on larceny charges on March 30 and June 8. Yet another migrant gangbanger busted in the raid, 21-year-old Fernandez Franco Graymer de Dios, was being processed for deportation after getting caught at the border in May. However, the sources said he claimed fear of persecution and was released pending a court date only to disappear, which resulted in a deportation order in absentia on November 20. Meanwhile, Valero-Calderon, the migrant fugitive whose ankle monitor led the feds to the gang, dodged the law several times before the Bronx raid, the sources added. Valero-Calderon entered the U.S. at Eagle Pass, Texas, in August 2022 and was released with a court date. The sources said he reported to a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement office in the Big Apple the following month, but soon had a rap sheet of his own. He was twice busted on larceny charges in New York and New Jersey, which led to a conviction in June 2023 after a separate petty larceny conviction in Nassau County on April 24, 2023, records show. Valero-Calderon then blew off a mandatory check-in with immigration authorities and was marked as a fugitive, yet somehow remained free despite a subsequent Florida arrest on February 17 this year for fraud, larceny, and resisting arrest, according to the sources. He was ordered deported on April 25, but was still on the loose on December 5. All of the illegal migrants were identified by federal immigration sources as members of TDA. The gang in an underage offshoot, Diablos de la 42, or Devils of 42nd Street, have landed on NYPD radar in recent months, including for a rash of heists in Times Square. The tiny terrors, some as young as 11, have exploited the state's lax criminal justice and juvenile detention statutes to remain on the streets despite troubling rap sheets.